Hello, welcome to this episode of Star Wars Generations podcast. Friend, we have a lot going on right now in terms of Star Wars, in terms of other content coming out. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to release this episode because we're going to see how a bunch of things fit in, don't fit. We first heard that Young Jedi Adventures was going to be coming. I'm sorry. We'd first heard that the Ninth Jedi was going to be releasing week to week. I have more recently heard that it's all going to come out at once. So I'm not sure how many episodes of that we're going to do, but this will probably come after that or possibly as a break in the middle of it. Not sure yet, but we wanted to get recorded because we're continuing through our journey of the many seasons of the Clone Wars. And one of the most important arcs, both because it has like a lot of impact in future media, but also because it is just so, first of all, it's a nice break from all the darkness. It has some of our favorite characters. It has a wooden lightsaber, and it has just like a great illustration of what does it mean to be a youngling. Not just with Anakin swinging a lightsaber at your head, but when you're learning how to be a Jedi and all this kind of good stuff. So we're talking about the Young Jedi arc, episodes 5 through 9 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Aaron, what do you think of these episodes?
I love these episodes. I always love something where we get to have like a new set of cast introduced for an episode arc. But then, of course, we still have our classic Ahsoka there as their mentor. And especially in these later seasons, we already talked about where Ahsoka ends up in this season. But I do love to see her pushed into like a more of a mentor role, as she's approaching Jedi knighthood. And it's interesting, the episodes where she is cast out of the Jedi Order and then they invite her back as a knight, she still would have been one of the youngest Jedi Knights ever elected. Like Ahsoka is still very young. She was very young for a Padawan as well. And so I love to see her in a position to teach others and not just learn herself.
Right.
And I liked that these episodes were kind of removed from the war.
Mm-hmm.
Like there wasn't necessarily like the bad guys weren't separatists. It wasn't like General Grievous or something like that. It's Hondo who kind of gave them trouble.
Yeah. You really get the sense that this is an episode, most of what we're watching is not the Jedi as they normally are. It's the Jedi during wartime. And I feel like this is the closest we've gotten since Phantom Menace to seeing just the Jedi as they would normally be. Like I think probably Obi-Wan, Ahsoka herself, most of them going back long time. Yoda, when he was a youngling, went through something like this on Ilum or one of the other places where you can get kyber crystals. So just for those who haven't seen it, let me give a quick read some quick episode summaries. This comes from Wikipedia. I'm sorry. Actually, it's episodes 6 through 10, not 5 through 9. So episode 6, The Gathering. Ahsoka and Yoda take a group of younglings to a cave on Ilum to perform a Jedi rite of passage called The Gathering, where they will each have to face an internal fear or flaw to retrieve a kyber crystal so they can begin building their own lightsabers. Then it's followed by a test of strength. While returning to Coruscant with their lightsaber crystals, the younglings are attacked by Hondo, who wants to steal their crystals and sell them. Ahsoka must defend the younglings from the pirates. Episode 8, Bound for Rescue. With Ahsoka captured by Hondo, the younglings go to Florum to rescue her, against the wishes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. However, before Obi-Wan can stop the younglings, he is attacked by General Grievous and defeated, but nearly kills the droid general by setting the self-destruct on the negotiator, allowing his escape. The younglings succeed in infiltrating Hondo's lair, but end up as prisoners themselves. Episode 9, Unnecessary Bond. To revenge himself on Hondo for his past capture, Count Dooku has General Grievous attack the pirates' lair on Florum, so Ahsoka and Hondo must join forces in order to survive this encounter. So we really kind of have two different things. We have a standalone episode of who these characters, kind of an introduction to these characters and an introduction to the whole idea of how Padawans, how younglings becoming Padawans get their kyber crystal to make their first lightsaber. And then we have a 3-episode arc about those characters. Let's start with The Gathering. What do you think of this episode?
I loved this episode. I love how it shows like the different insecurities different people may be dealing with. And even we find like the most confident seeming youngling ends up having the most trouble finding his crystal.
Yep.
And when he stops to help Katuni, I believe it's Pedro and Katuni, I believe.
Yep.
She's stuck. He chooses to help her. She can escape. And this whole thing is like time bound because once the sun sets, the ice will form and you're stuck in the ice caves forever, or something very scary like that. Which we all find out at the end was Yoda just kind of playing them and having a good old laugh.
Yeah, because actually, like, it's just ice that formed. They're not going to lock them behind. They're not monsters. You can just break.
You can break through ice. It's ice.
Yeah, it's a fun setup, and it's interesting because it is very tropey, and it's very much the kind of thing you'd expect in like an ABC school after school special kind of thing, or like a kids show where each of the kids has to learn a lesson. And the strong implication is that that's kind of intentional, that the Force is guiding them to the crystal, and each one of them has to overcome their own particular challenge. And whether it's being brave, whether it's willing to be patient, whether it's willing to be bold, whether it's willing to, as you said, to not be selfless and to help others. And the setup for some of them is stronger than others. But like, I think as long as you just accept, like, look, this is more of the kids episode, that's totally fine. It's quite charming. And it is a nice illustration of this idea of like the crystal choosing you, as much as you choose the crystal. And that, like, I'm left with questions about, like, is the Force doing it? Are the crystals sentient? Like, and I kind of like that I don't know. That it's just part of this mystery of somehow there's a knowledge within the crystals, within the Force, that guides everyone in the right direction. How that actually works, that's the mystery of the Force. We don't know. We're not going to argue the metaphysics. We're going to show you a cool story about it.
Yeah. I also like that it's a little unknown. Like, they don't dive like straight into it. I know a lot of people, including yourself, have had some like gripes with the idea of midichlorians and when they tried to scientifically explain the Force.
Yeah.
But I like that we're getting more information about the Force and about the Jedi without there being like direct explanation to make it fit into our real world. Because it's not our world, it's different.
I think that's a good point. I think if they'd said, like, look, there's something in the molecular structure of each crystal that calls to a certain kind of midichlorian, like that, it'd be nonsense. That's the whole point. Is we like the mystery, we like the mysticism of it, or at least I do. I don't want to speak for everybody else.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's something special about not understanding everything and being able to fill in the blanks with your own kind of thoughts and headcanons.
Exactly. And yeah, it's fun to see Ahsoka here, especially because we've been talking about how Ahsoka has been getting more and more leadership opportunities. And obviously her ability to be a leader of the clones is going to be very important in season 7. But it's her as a late teenager ordering around people who are significant. Well, depending on how you do the clone math, in terms of years on this earth, not older, but in terms of like growth chamber and all that stuff, older, and certainly are much more trained in battle than she is. And so even when they listen to her as a commander, and I think they really come to respect her, they're still aware that she's a kid to them. Whereas, and this is a reality I'm sure I'm going to face as I my own kid gets older, to someone the age of the younglings, a 16-year-old and a 45-year-old and a 65-year-old, we're all just old. You know, like to those eyes, someone who's, twice as big as them is just old. And, that can be very sobering for younger people, but also kind of a nice, like, I think the younglings are the first ones for whom, like, Ahsoka and Anakin and Obi-Wan are all kind of the same. They probably respect the chain of command, but they don't see Ahsoka as one of them, unlike the others. She's just one.
Yeah, exactly.
So anything else about that specific episode? Do you want to explain the name you have today?
Oh, yeah. So my name today is Gunji's sick-ass wooden lightsaber, because after they get their kyber crystals, I believe it's in the second episode where Huyang teaches them how to make their lightsabers. And, he's explaining. Huyang is the droid that we see in the Ahsoka live-action show. Yeah. He's always been the one to help Jedi find their crystals and make their lightsabers. That's like his whole thing.
So you're right. I was thinking it was episode 1, but no, it's actually in this arc. So yeah, let's start talking about the arc itself.
Okay.
And yeah, keep going. So
Huyang has for thousands of years been the one in charge of teaching Jedi about crystals and how to build your lightsaber, how to make it your own, find something that works for you, but is also like good in battle. And something that we've not seen before is a Wookiee Jedi. So Gunji is a Jedi. He's a Padawan, well, not a Padawan yet, but he's a youngling, and he just got his crystal. and he's kind of struggling with, what do I want to put into this lightsaber? What makes it feel like me? What makes it feel like home? And he ends up with this really beautiful wooden hilt.
Yeah.
Because he's from, Kashyyyk, and they live in the trees. And I thought it was so cool. Some of the other younglings tell little stories about like, oh, this means this to me. But Gunji's was just so special. And I liked that since we've never seen a Wookiee Jedi at that point in Star Wars lore,
right,
at least on screen, I liked that there got to be a little bit of difference and like respect for their culture. Because the Wookiees are like very, to my understanding, very steeped in culture. Routine and ritual means a lot to them. And so I liked that he still got to hold on to some of his past, even if it's like, because they're all Jedi attachments, but it's like, it's not really showing an attachment. It's showing respect, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned that, this is the first time that we have seen it in terms of like when this came out, because this, like, the only other Wookiee Jedi on screen, at least that I can remember, there may have been like one off in the background of Attack of the Clones, but never a named character, but was in The Acolyte, certainly was one. But that obviously, we've already talked about that on this podcast, but that came out many years after this episode of Clone Wars. And you're right. I think it is, to me, it's this idea of that the Force like speaks to each of us in our own language. It's going to talk to, it's going to talk to each person in the way that makes sense for them. And one thing I really like about the Wookiees that some of the books have emphasized, and certainly this episode is emphasizing, is that you can be a lot of the things that people think of as primitive while still being a highly advanced spacefaring society. We saw the Ewoks, who were quite primitive. Like, they don't have electricity. They don't have modern conveniences. They're living like kind of an ancient kind of a life, living in huts in the trees. And that's great for them, and they're good fighters, and that's awesome. But and the Wookiees look like that on the surface because they do still live in trees. They do still build most things out of wood and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's in part because the trees are a huge source of the Force to them. And it's kind of a nice reminder of, actually, you can be an incredibly sophisticated, scientific, spacefaring, laser-wielding society without saying that means you have to climb down out of the trees and mow them all down and chop them all down and live the kind of suburban, all of nature is packaged and made for you kind of life. Like, it's a really beautiful thing. And I think you're right. That lightsaber is such a great statement of that.
Yeah. And I loved how we had not just one, but we had two main younglings that were not, they didn't speak basic. So, like there's Biff, I believe he's an Ithorian, which are the guys that have they're kind of a long neck, hammerhead style, and they have like the mouths are on the side of their neck, but they speak mostly in like blips and squeaks and this and that. And then Gunji, of course, speaks Shriwook. And I loved that we were still able to flesh out these characters and like really understand their fears and their concerns, especially Biff in the ice cave. There we go. Yeah. He, had a lot of fears to deal with, and the characters still felt very real and relatable, even though they didn't speak, galactic basic.
Right. And in part, that helps through something that Star Wars has always done, which is they don't use subtitles for the most part. Revenge of the Sith being one a very unfortunate exception, but they have the characters respond to them because the characters can understand them. And so in the same way, like, you never quite knew exactly what Han said, but what Chewie said, but you listened to Han and you basically figured out what he said. In the same way here, Ahsoka responds to both of them because clearly she, and this is again a great deal of Star Wars, it's that she understands their language and they understand hers, but just the biology of their vocal cords are so different. In some books, they actually go more into this with the Ithorians, that their language is built around creatures who have two throats and a lot of like tonal stuff. And that a creature with one throat can't make those noises, and probably vice versa. And so it's a really nice idea of like, I'm not going to try and speak your language, but I'm going to understand it. And so we can speak our own languages to each other and still communicate.
Yeah. And that's another like nice way to be like, you don't have to speak, and this is more of an Americanized kind of idea, but you don't have to speak the normal, quote unquote, normal language to be heard, to be powerful, and to be like seen.
Very much so. Very much so. I often said, since I moved to the Midwest, I really come to love it here. Don't get me wrong. Every time I go back to New York, I'm like, oh my God, this is so expensive. But like, I miss being on the subway and just hearing so many different languages around me. To me, there was something so beautiful and rich about that. And, you know, we're getting more like that with Minnesota, all the Somali and other immigrant populations. So that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So one other cool thing to mention about the droid you mentioned, voiced by David Tennant, both in this and he's just great. He's having so much fun. He's very much that absent-minded professor, and he's dropping so much lore as he goes. You know, he'll mention like, oh yes, you chose this style that hasn't been chosen since such and such Jedi, you know, long ago. I think someone like chooses something that was Qui-Gon's or something like that. I watched him a couple weeks ago and I didn't get a chance to rewatch him just for today. Do you remember what I'm talking about specifically?
Yes, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's something like that. Sue us. We're not the Exact Details podcast. If that's what you want. There's lots of great podcasts out there. But I love that and that kind of window into this. And the idea that, Obi-Wan met with this guy. Anakin met with this guy. All of them met with this guy at some point in time. Huang. And of course, what comes into this beautiful, wonderful little utopia of Jedi and their lightsabers, but Hondo Ohnaka. And here I'm going to give my first and only really complaint about this arc. And this was one that I can't say was mine alone. One of my former co-hosts, Sarah, brought this up, and we agreed with it then. I wanted to reiterate, I don't think the Hondo Ohnaka that we've met would be this willing to kill children. Like,
yeah.
And he says a lot of it is scare tactics, but a couple of times he's pretty close to killing a kid. And I feel like they had made him up to, like, you can make someone the charming because of how evil they are, which is Cad Bane, or you can make them more like a scamp, you know? They're going to do bad things, but they're never really going to hurt anybody too badly. They're going to make you laugh about it. And that had been Hondo. I feel like if you want someone who's going to kill kids, that's what Cad Bane is for. Maybe Enbo, you know, but like you have a bunch of them. That's not what Hondo should be.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It always struck me as odd where like, because I've never viewed Hondo as like a villain. You know, I mean, like maybe when he was first introduced, but at this point in the series, you know, we're 5 seasons in, we've seen Hondo be all sorts of like silly, goofy, helpful, and annoying. So yeah, I agree. It's like a scare tactic, sure, but it felt aggressive for the character we'd been introduced to. I can understand that gripe for sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it leads to some, you know, just again, kind of kids showy stuff that I was not the biggest fan of, but I thought was perfectly well done in terms of like the kids all banding together and again, kind of facing their demons, but they're able to do it. And it takes them to what I think is the most fun part, which is where, you know, Dooku shows up and now the kids and Hondo have to team up.
Yeah.
What do we like about that or not like about that? I'm still here. I'm just turning my camera off for a second.
No, you're good. I like how quickly Hondo flips to allies when he's on the losing side of something.
Yes. Yeah, he is. He reads tea leaves really well, and he's really quick to be like, "No, okay, I was keeping you kidnapped, but now you're my ally, right? Right?
But it was all a joke, guys. Like, you're gonna help me, right? Yeah. I love that. There was a quote that I was just looking at where he says, like, I may be a pirate, but I do not like taking children into battle. And Ahsoka's like, that didn't seem to bother you when you attacked us. And Hondo goes, well, today is a new day, and lucky for you, today I like children.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of their, like, okay, we know the last couple episodes he was a little out of character. It's fine, you know, and, you know, he's so changeable, to quote Moriarty in the new Sherlock. So, new-ish Sherlock. So, yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's too much, like, you know, nothing kind of revolutionary happens in those episodes, but I think they're just fun. And I think it's funny because it's, you know, the episodes that we have the most to talk about are the ones where, like, these harrowing life or death. What does it mean? Are you a Jedi? Are you not a Jedi? Do they trust you? Who do you trust? What is the dark side? Like, that gives us so much to chew on. And so I'm a little bit running out of topics for this one. I think it's okay if it's a short episode, but I just want to reemphasize, like, I feel like it was very well placed, because this comes right after the Onderon arc and Saw Gerrera and the dead sister and all that. And it's just a nice couple of weeks of, you know what, we can be chill. Hondo's going to make us laugh.
Yeah.
We're going to have some adventures. Count Dooku's going to be the real villain. Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I feel like it's perfectly placed within the season, especially a season that has so many darker or more serious arcs within it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind a few like fluff episodes. I don't see fluff as a negative thing. Sometimes it's like it's giving you a break.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved seeing these little Jedi grow and, Katuni gain some confidence because she was always pretty unsure of herself. And then she kind of ended up being the unlikely leader of the younglings, even though Pedro's the one who's always running his mouth and talking about, I'm so confident, this and that. It's fun to see the classic tropes, of course, play out, but in smaller stakes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's true. And, and there's still some of the stuff we've talked about. In some ways, I'm a little sad that Ahsoka was the one who was captured, because the idea of the younglings all kind of ganging up and being like, we're not going to listen to Obi-Wan. We're going to go do what, we think is right. Mm-hmm. I feel like Anakin would be cheering them along and Ahsoka would be like, that's not great, but that is what I would do with Anakin. So I guess you're right, So, but it's still fun. And seeing Obi-Wan be like, oh my God, there's more of them,
Right.
And I guess, okay, here, I'll bring in some of the darkness. I wonder if they keep Anakin out of this episode in part because it would make everyone think about Anakin killing the younglings in, only like 2 years as the story goes. Like, I'm sorry, we were all
you're right. I think it's even closer than 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And these guys are probably part of the ones who, get capped. And yeah, I think like if it had been Anakin, we would have had to be talking about it. So of course I have to talk about it because I got to find the darkness. But yeah, so I think that's probably one good reason to keep Anakin out of it.
That's funny. I hadn't considered that. Yeah. I also, when I first watched this series, I don't think I had seen Revenge of the Sith yet.
That's fair. So
that's funny.
Yeah. All right. Well,
also because Anakin would have been like, "Go get her."
And yeah, exactly.
Like, that would ruin the whole them banding together and doing their own thing.
Yeah, exactly. He would have been off leading them by himself. So, last things you wanted to bring up?
No, not really. I didn't have anything super specific. These episodes are just fun. They always are feel good.
Yeah.
They still have some nice action.
Yeah, I think the first time I watched them, I liked them. And then when I remembered I think a lot of people like to bash on these episodes because they are kind of more kidsy. But I don't think that's bad looking back on it. Like, I think if you're willing to accept, like, not everything is like dark peering into your own navel, like dark moments of the soul. It's okay to just have fun. And that's what these episodes are. So, yeah. Cool. Well, Erin, as always, thank you so much. To our listeners, please let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We are still on the every 2 weeks plan. So our next episode will be, actually, no, I'm sorry. By the time this episode comes out, I have no idea if we'll still be doing every week or every 2 weeks. So who knows? But check our website, theethicalpanda.com. That's where you can find everything about this podcast, everything about the Superhero Ethics podcast. Paul Hoppy, my now new co-host over on Superhero Ethics, has published a book, Zen Badman's Friday Night is My Monday Morning, Volume 1. It's a great collection of essays about poker, but also poker and life. And there's stuff about how you start projects and how you deal with losing and defeat and how you set time schedules and just a lot of cool life stuff. So please check that out. With that link, you get to save money and throw a little bit back to the podcast. Please check out all the other sponsors and stuff that are going to be listed in our show notes. And most importantly, we have spoken.
Stay classy, Ilum. Well, today is the new day, and lucky for you, today, I like children.
Lucky for us.